Hey guys, Jed from Cook Culture, here to do an add-on to our last extensive video on seasoning cast iron cookware. What I want to go over today is a couple of simple tools that will really help make seasoning and looking after your cast iron at home really simple. So I went into fine detail about how to use salt and paper towel that is totally functional and works really well. But since then, we've gotten this new tool that is working incredibly well. So it's a chainmail scrubby with a silicone innard, and it works brilliantly well for caring for and seasoning cast iron. And I'm gonna go over how that works today. So we've got a couple of pans here that are not in the best of shape. They're not horrible, but they're not great, especially this crepe pan that has bits and pieces of carbon built in, a little bit of seasoning going on, but like it's not like in horrible shape, but it really needs some work. So with this tool, I'm going to polish this down nice and simply, and then we're going to be using another new tool that we have in our cast iron arsenal, and this is beeswax. So beeswax is a beeswax and high heat oil combination that I keep in a nice little Ziploc bag with a piece of cotton cloth here. The reason for it is that if you use paper towel, you're constantly throwing away your wax. So this gets kind of loaded, a lot like polishing your shoes, and you keep this guy and you dab some out of the tin and you use that for seasoning. And I'm finding that the combination of the beeswax and the oil is brilliant. So what we're gonna do is head over to the sink, and we're going to use the stainless steel scrubber to clean this pan. And I will also give this one a quick little polish while we're there. And this guy here that has quite a bit of flaking buildup. So this has had a really poor, and you can see this on my fingers here. This has had a poor seasoning on it at some point in time, seasoned with something that didn't really adhere very well, and it's all flaking off here. I'm going to take this right down with that polisher, with this stainless steel scrubber, and really go to town on this one and bring it back so it looks a lot like this one here. This one here isn't in awesome shape. It was a pretty badly beat up pan at one point in time. I'm going to give it a little bit of work also. But I'll show a couple of examples here and then we'll bring them over and season. Okay, so I'm going to start with this is an omelet pan. It's an omelet pan because it's a rounded cornered pan, so they call it an omelet pan. I'm gonna start with this guy, and I'm going to use the scrubber, and I'm not gonna use any soap. There's no need. If this was something in terrible shape, I might use something that would be a little bit more corrosive to get something off, but I'm just not gonna need that with this. I'm going to be able to take anything that's gonna wanna come off, it's gonna come off with this guy here. So I'm not gonna use any soap. I'm going to use some warmish water just so my hands aren't cold, but that really doesn't matter. But it doesn't need soap whatsoever. But getting into here, I'm just putting in this guy in my hand, and I can actually turn the water off. And I'm really pushing hard here. And as you can see, I'm scraping right into the surface here and pushing down really hard. But it's got a really damaged surface in it, and you want to get all that damaged material off. So this isn't just getting regular buildup of carbon like we will on the other pan there. This is actually working that off. And in the past, I've used things like Barkeeper's Friend to get this off, which works very well. But what I find is that after I use Barkeeper's Friend, the seasoning process after takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Where this process, if I use just the scrubby and that's it, I find that I can really easily and effectively build the seasoning back up. It really takes one or two, even stovetop applications of oil, and the seasoning works really, really well. So we'll do a little fast forward here, and I'll continue working on this guy. Okay, so I've got about 5 minutes of solid work into this pan. And it may not look like a lot, but it's a massive, massive difference in the inside of this pan. So what's really interesting of using that tool instead of using Barkeeper's Friend or something really corrosive and fairly toxic is that the pan still is greasy. It still has a nice slipperiness on it. So there's still a solid amount of seasoning on this pan. Even though I've got scratches in it and I've taken a ton of that surface off, but I've still got some blackness around the edges here. That doesn't matter. That's not what you're cooking with. But everything in here is wonderfully smooth. There's a couple of little carbonated spots in there, but to be honest with you, that doesn't matter at all. But the pan feels wonderfully smooth. And it was a solid effort. Like, my shoulder is sore. I've been putting it in there. But it, 10 minutes, whichever, basically this pan, I can get it to be perfect. So that guy now is ready. We'll be taking him back to the stove and be doing a stovetop seasoning with the beeswax here in a sec. Okay? So that's that pan ready to go. And the first one that I showed you was this guy. So this is very typical of just cooking at home. So this pan here has been used in our kitchen, used, put away, used, put away, used, put away. Not seasoned or looked after. So it hasn't been cleaned properly and it hasn't been post-seasoned very well. But something quite fatty is always cooked on here, particularly crepes. And I would say something else was cooked on here to get the carbon deposits. But it's not getting abused, but it's not being looked after. So this is kind of how they become over time. And this is how pans degrade slowly from a point where, yeah, the seasoning's great and everything's awesome, to a point where it's like, it's kind of a hassle and it's sticking and it's a problem. Mostly it's because we don't have a tool like this. So this guy is what makes this job so incredibly easy. So again, a little bit of water. I'm not going to be pushing anywhere near as hard as I was with this guy here, with taking it down. All I'm trying to do here is get the carbon buildup off. The seasoning, as you can see by all the blackening, is all there. And you can see like the water beads off the pan. So the seasoning is all there. We just want to get all the carbon off. The carbon is the part that's stuck on, that's going to create more sticking, and then that carbon's going to build and build and build and build. So if you're using something that is as strong and as hard but as gentle as chainmail every day, every time you cook, it works beautifully. So we just go all around, get into the corner, give it a rinse. And what we've done, yeah. So a little bit of carbon there, a little bit of buildup there, a little bit along there that I got to take care of. But basically, that's 90% there. I'll just take care of those other few, and then we'll be adding that one to the stove to be seasoning also. Okay. Okay, so this is an example of a pan that is in really good shape for seasoning, but is allowed to have just a few buildups on it, right? And these can be very, very difficult, these carbon buildups, to get off with anything unless something that is quite aggressive. So again, this is where the chainmail scrubby will work so well. And I would take this off of a warm heat right into the water, let it cool to a point where I can touch it, and just give them a scrubbing over top, getting any of that built up carbon off of the seasoning. This is polishing the existing seasoning. Give it a rub all around. What happens is you start getting to a little bit of the top layer of grime on a pan that hasn't been cleaned this way, and everything starts to lift off. So this pan is in great shape, but as soon as I start to lift it, as you'll see here, you've got, if you look in the sink here, right? There's a lot of carbon that's on there. That's not seasoning, that's built on food. So what I'm doing here is giving this guy a very standard scrub. This is something that should actually happen every day, and this hasn't been done with this scrubbing. So this pan is in great shape. The seasoning underneath is in great shape. It's just that this surface material, the surface food, needs to come off. Or what will happen is that you have the seasoning that the food is sticking to, and then you'll start sticking to the food that's stuck on top. And the food is all blackened and kind of nasty. It's all carbonized. And so what you see underneath there is the seasoned pan. And this is smooth like ice underneath. Nice and smooth. It's still got a bit of oil feel, but this is part of the seasoning, there's no doubt. Like, I will season this back up. But this part here is like rough, with a rough texture. It's not smooth. You don't want your seasoning to be like gritty. On a carbon steel pan like this that is smooth, your seasoning should be smooth. The seasoning doesn't need to be chunky. It can get a little bit, but you want it to be generally nice and smooth all around. And if you start getting built up chunkiness, that needs to come down. And that's where, I'm having to put a decent amount of effort into getting this pan ready to be seasoned or re-seasoned. But it should be generally quite smooth. I got a bit of chunkiness in the middle there. And it's just a hand feel. You can just feel it with your bare fingers. If it's smooth, it's smooth. If it's not, it's not. So that one is now ready for some seasoning. So last one is this guy here. I had done this one a few weeks ago, and we had seasoned it, and the seasoning just isn't really getting built up on it. Regular maintenance, we have a lot of different chefs and a lot of different people that are coming and maintaining the kitchen. Our pans don't always get maintained to the best amount like you can at home. So I'm just gonna give this a quick scrubbing with this guy, and then it will be all ready to go. So I've just taken a little bit of, I just noticed it was starting to go a tiny bit orange, and to me that's just a tiny bit of oxidation. So we're just going to build that seasoning up a little bit more. Okay, so these 4 pans are ready to go. They're wet. We'll dry them on the stovetop. The heat from the stovetop will dry them, and then we'll season them. So back to the stovetop we go. Okay, so we've got all the pans now on the hob. I've got them all at 7, so 3/4 heat. You'll see that there's a little bit of scratching in all of them from the chainmail scrubby. That's because I was putting quite a lot of effort. I have a pan at home. I've got a Field number 10, and it has those scratches in it because I just use that on a daily basis with a kind of medium effort and give it a polish every time that I use it. These guys needed me to go a little bit deeper on them, so I pushed quite hard. So I have them on the heat. They're all starting to heat up. The pans have dried from the heat. I've got the beeswax and the cotton cloth that I keep stored in a Ziploc. And I am going to apply just a nice thin coat. So just to make it shiny. Nothing too thick. And I'll do the same to each pan. So you can see the definite difference here of it being shiny and not shiny. And this is 1 coat. So depending on what I was going to do here, I would do different coats. And it's interesting, now that I got this in, I had this guy kind of clean. If you look at it, see if you look close here, there's a bit of a buildup of some food in there. To be really particular, I would get in there. This is smooth, it's really hot. That's really smooth, I can't feel it, but I would probably get in there and try to work that down, maybe, see if I can. It may be just a reaction with where the seasoning came off, that was bare metal. It might be a little bit of oxidation, and we'll just see how it builds up. But these guys here, they're all starting to heat up. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but this guy here particularly is just starting to smoke. So the smoke is just starting to come. So that one for sure, I'm gonna turn the heat off. Okay, so that guy's smoking enough. I don't want it to smoke any more than that. This guy here, just gonna keep applying. Stab in here. If you come close, you can see where it's starting to separate a little bit. So what I do there, this is also because it's a crepe pan, it's a concave pan. It allows the batter to get flat. So I'm just going to get some oil back over top of that and beeswax. So, and it's starting to smoke. Smoke is coming off the surface, especially in the middle of the pan. So I'm going to turn the heat off of that one. This guy here, this is a really nice thick pan. He hasn't quite started to smoke at all. Same with this one. This is another, the crepe pans are thinner, so they smoked a little bit quicker. These guys here, I'm gonna go up to 8 for a sec. I just wanna make sure we get to that smoke point. I don't want the oil to be soft. I want the oil to make sure that it's polymerized, and that means that it is hardening to the surface. The surface, the oils are bonding, and the moisture is evaporating, so it actually becomes a bonded surface. So now you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but it's just starting to billow a little bit of smoke. So I'll turn that one off. And then this guy here hasn't quite developed smoke yet, but he'll be coming fairly quickly. And then, so when the smoke comes on this guy, that it is just starting to happen now, so I will turn that one off. And now, all those guys are off, but I'm gonna let them sit here and cool. So they'll come to room temperature, and then they're done. So using the chainmail scrubby, like so, using the buzzy wax, oil wax, that you could easily use grapeseed oil also. I just find that the beeswax really helps to get the oil all over the pan, and you don't have any pooling, which is quite nice. That's the advantage of the beeswax. Between those two, and being on this on a daily basis, that's how you're going to be successful using your carbon steel or your cafe.